All righty. Welcome to today's webcast, reintroduction of Conduit for Strive for College partners. My name is Matt Rubinoff. I'm with Strive for College. Really happy to be partnering with PlatformQ Education again this year after great success in our first year of partnership last year. So for colleges who have been with us before, this is a refresher course on the Conduit platform and the amazing technology services and opportunities that are provided by our partners here and available to you as a college partner with Strive. And for new partners who have joined us this year, this is a first peek at what this Conduit platform is all about, and some unique opportunities available for you to connect with strivers online. With that, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Gil Rogers, to introduce himself and take us through the first bit of our presentation today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt. And yes, it's been great to be a partner with Strive for College, being in the higher ed space for a long time. Matt and I have worked together at a couple of different places and on different programs. And this is a really great partnership for us because it helps us to better support students and colleges alike, as well as provide those access opportunities. So it's really great to be a part of this and to be presenting today. For those who don't know me, my name is Gil Rogers. I'm the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships for PlatformQ Education. I've been here a little over a year, but I've been in higher ed my entire career. So I started as an admissions counselor at a regional private school in Connecticut, went on to work at another school in New England area, and then dove to the ed tech consulting side about 10 years ago, working at Zinch.com before it was acquired by Chegg. Went to NRCCUA for a little while, and then now I'm here back on the startup-y side working at PlatformQ Education. So before we dive into Conduit and solutions and plans and those sorts of things, I think it's always important to kind of get centered around key challenges and student perspectives, because I think before we could talk about any solutions or strategies, it's important to understand what it is that we're solving for, right? So when we think about the common challenges we face, there are a lot of different things that you can think about, from reaching students and supporting students and supporting institutional success. What we see is that things like demographic shifts, mandates to use new approaches are impacting all institutions. But we're also facing increased competition and constrained budgets. So how do we do things like adapting with our use of technology, supporting the changing student landscape, all with those issues in mind? And specifically, when we think about striver populations, striver populations are students who are either an underrepresented student population on campus, first generation, low income students, so students that are a high service area for institutions, but have unique needs. And I think one of the challenges we see is that a lot of times we kind of put striver populations all within the same bucket of types of students, but we know, and this is data from the Edge Ventures Prospective Student Survey from last year, there isn't a huge amount of overlap between these types of populations when we think about underrepresented minority students, low-income students, first-generation students. But each of those populations specifically make up a sizable representation of the types of students who we are trying to reach and serve as institutions. So it's important for us to develop strategies and plans to not only reach these students, but also support them as they have unique needs than some of their counterparts who may be attending our institutions. The other thing to think about, and this is common across all student populations, is the way that students and schools connect has evolved and changed over the past 15, 20 years, right? We know that video is is a very much preferred form of communication and consuming of content. 7 out of 10 students watch videos from a college specifically. And I'll get into video specifically with streaming content and online video in a second. But thinking about what is your video strategy and how are you using video to support students through the process. The other, and this is again across all students, and this is from the EduVentures student sentiment survey from last year, EDU branded content is the most trusted source of college information. And that makes sense when you think about it. Students are getting a lot of emails, they're getting a lot of letters. They can go onto Google, they can search and compare and shop and look at schools side by side on sites like Niche or US News or whatever it is. But when they want official deadlines, they want official contact information, they're going to go directly to the .edu. And 3/4 of students, when they get that search mail that you might send when you buy a list from a testing company or a survey company, don't necessarily return the postcard or fill out the form online. They go to the website to learn more. So it's seen as a trustworthy source of information, which is why it's so important for it to be easy to navigate and accurate, right? And the last piece is current students and counselors are rated amongst the most influential connections that a student can make on campus. And I think when we think about striver populations, counselors a lot of times are seen as the advocate for the student on campus, the one that can help them through the process, answer their questions. Current students, of course, are our best quote unquote salespeople at our institution, right? They're the ones that share their experiences and share their perspectives in an authentic way. And I think that the point of all that is that the admissions business is still a people business and always will be. I think what's changed is that the way that some of those connections happen has changed. It used to just be counselors visiting high schools, students going to college fairs, and students coming to visit campus. Now it's those things plus the opportunity to reach those students on social media, whether it's with your organic reach or with sponsored content. It's advertising, it's text messaging, it's webcasting, it's streaming, it's chat. It's all of these different ways that connections can be made. And I think the key component of all of this is that students are consumers too, right? When we think about how they go about engaging with content. And that means that all of this, the video content that's institutionally branded, featuring current students and counselors, needs to be easy to access and immediately available as well, right? That's a reality of not just the college search, but just consumer behavior in general, right? So thinking about that with respect to easy to access and easy to and immediately available, being online is a big component of that, right? Every school's got a website. Every school's got some sort of communication plan and campaign. How automated it is and how effective it is, that depends on the school. But every school's got some sort of has some sort of website, and every school's got a Facebook page, right? And if you don't, you're a little behind in that category. And so one of the things when we think about trends in social media engagement is that in online engagement rather is things like social media. Social media isn't new by any stretch of the imagination, and its role continues to change, right? What's interesting about the trends in social media, we always hear the use of social media has declined year over year, but the thing is that its role in the college search remains, right? It gives students that window into the culture and life on campus, and as well as a mechanism for getting their questions answered, right? So being able to find information that's important to them. The challenge that's arisen is because of the changes in algorithms and the identification of brand pages versus people pages and groups and all these sorts of things, going viral isn't necessarily an option for most institutions. A couple of conferences I've been to this past summer, I asked the room the question, how many of you in the room have, or how many of you on the webcast right now work at a school that has a football team that's on national television every Saturday during football season, or a team that's in the later rounds of the NCAA tournament every year. Those are the schools that have a chance at going viral when they do something fun and exciting. But the reality is most schools don't fall into those buckets, right? Most of us have to work a little harder from an exposure perspective. So with social, it's really about having a solid listening strategy, being responsive when students are mentioning us and asking us questions and reaching out. And then also leveraging some type of a sponsored content and advertising strategy would be a prudent part of developing an online campaign. The thing that's important, though, is that it's not just about ads. A while back we did a webcast specifically on revitalizing your social media strategy without blowing your whole budget on ads, right? Because you don't have unlimited budget for your online exposure. And the thing is that video is a key component to all of this as well. When we think about the rise in video on social media specifically, next year, 82% of internet traffic will be video streaming. Now, that's not just YouTube and Facebook Live. That's part of it. It's Netflix, it's Hulu, it's going to be Disney Plus, like all those sorts of things. But what's interesting is that when you think about, again, consumer behavior, over 80% of people would rather watch a live stream from a brand they follow than read a social media post or a blog or visit their blog, right? So, we know students don't read, parents barely read. So creating video content that supports them through the application process, the financial aid process, these are all things we need to think about because it's just piggybacking on overall consumer behavior. The other thing that's interesting, and this is how we get back into supporting of Striver populations, is viewers of Facebook spend 3 times more watching and interact 6 times more during live videos. And when we think about the early adopters of things like Facebook Live, 70% of early adopters of Facebook Live were high school students and college students, with very heavy representation from underserved minority communities. So when we think about our strategy for better supporting students throughout the process, a streaming strategy needs to be a part of this. And I think the thing that really underlines this the most, and this comes from the RNL e-expectations report, is that the number of high school seniors that have watched a live stream has doubled year over year from 2018 to 2019. And we're not talking about doubling from a base of 1% to 2%. What we're talking about is now 40%, or 4 out of 10 of your prospective students are watching live streaming, right? And we do things and adjust our strategies because 1 in 10 students does something or says they do something. So when 4 in 10 does it, it's got to be a part of your strategy. So it's no longer what's your social strategy. It's no longer what's your video strategy. It's really what's your online engagement and streaming strategy is a big part of how we have to think about this as a process. And the last component that I'll talk about is online chat. So what's interesting is when we ask the question about online chat, we know that 7 out of 10 students say that chat on a college website is helpful, right? And we've all done it. We've gone on to an airline or a hotel or some other website where there's a chat tool enabled, and it's just easier to click the chat and ask someone a question a lot of times than it is to try to to pick up a phone, call a person, be on hold, all those sorts of things. What's a little disconcerting about the college side, though, is that only about 20% of students say that they've used live chat on a school's website. And the delta of this, or what's causing that disconnect, is opportunity, right? When I was at some conferences earlier this summer, I asked how many of us have chat tools on our website somehow, and less than half the room would raise their hands most of the time, right? So it's giving students that opportunity to engage with that channel because we know that it's highly valued, but very much underutilized. So again, what I mentioned before, it's not just your social media strategy or your digital marketing strategy, it's your overarching online engagement strategy that we really need to focus on. And chat needs to be a part of that overarching piece. And the final piece, of course, is that when we think about reaching students, it needs to be mobile, right? 20 years ago, when I was traveling for the University of Hartford, University of New Haven on the road, I had, a GPS, I had my phone, I had the car radio, I had the magazines that I would read during breaks between college visit, high school visits, etc. Now all of that stuff happens on my phone, right? Your cell phone to students is everything except maybe a phone, right? So we've got to make sure that our strategies have evolved to use phone in new ways. This is not to say that we shouldn't call students. Calling students is a prudent part of a plan. But what is our texting strategy? Online chat is kind of where texting was 5 years ago with respect to usage and opportunity, right? Students value it, but are they receiving what they want, right? What's our video strategy with respect to reaching students on mobile? What is our social strategy? What's our digital marketing strategy? All of this needs to include mobile as a component of this. They're all not just a component, as the core part of all of this, because every student is going about their search process in a different way, but using those common tools, right? So what we're talking about with all these changes and of resources and opportunity is really about the mass customization of the prospective student experience at scale. And what that is a really fancy way of saying that we need to give students the right information at the right time via the right communication channel and from the right sender, right? And that's a lot of rights to get right. So when we think about that, we what this does is kind of help us to understand that student perspective. What are we going to do when we are building our strategic plans for achieving just that, the right content at the right time via the right channels? And there are some pitfalls, right? We know that there are challenges that we face with overarching strategic planning, with online engagement planning specifically. There's a lot of different tools, bells and whistles out there, and creating an online engagement plan is more than just launching a webinar or more than just having an online chat. There's things like staff turnover. You lose expertise in specific areas and then have to kind of start over again year over year. Integration of reporting across different channels. You know, if your chat tool is different from your webcasting tool, which is different from your on-demand streaming tool, it creates disconnects. And those one-off webinar solutions oftentimes have a poorly branded experience. Standalone chat tools don't talk to your webcasting content, so you can't present something and talk about it at the same time. And then, of course, consistency across of timing of communications. If you don't own your CRM or the implementation of the CRM, there's some challenges there. So when we talk about Conduit as a platform that Matt mentioned before, what we do is we take all of those pieces and put them together to create consistent and continuous omni-channel online engagement. So it's not just reaching students on the Conduit platform, it's reaching students on the Conduit platform and Facebook Live and Twitter, and having a chat element and being able to measure all of this at each step of the way. And I think that's when you think about kind of one-off solutions like a WebEx or a GoToWebinar or a Zoom or even a Facebook Live by itself, right? They're hard to manage piece together. There might be some external downloads that create friction, additional registration processes that need to take place. Don't know if you noticed, but you got an email with a Q token link to watch this presentation. That's a direct login URL that bypasses registering for the platform to get right to the content. Imagine from a student perspective, having to click a link and then download an app and then log in somewhere to watch a video from a college. It's not going to happen, right? So it doesn't become a unified strategic component of an overarching plan. So when we think about Conduit, it's not just the software, but it's also the strategy and planning around it. And how do we help with supporting outcomes throughout the process? So what I'm going to do briefly before we turn to Matt to talk about how Strive partners can reach the Striver population and leverage the Conduit platform through their partnership with Strive. We're going to talk a little bit about how Conduit can help now that we understand kind of what the student perspective is. We understand kind of what the pitfalls and challenges are with overarching planning. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the Conduit piece and kind of what it does. So when we think about the software and the student experience element of all of this, what we are able to do is provide a continuous and consistent integrated user experience for students to be able to be identified by you, driven to your platform easily, and consuming of your content easily, all measurable throughout this whole process. So what we do is we generate what's called a Q token, mentioned it before. This is a unique identifier for event attendees. So this is a direct login link, for lack of a better term, that helps students to get directly to the platform. It can be delivered via email or text message, and then again bypasses any type of registration and goes directly to your platform experience, just like you're watching one here. So the nice piece of all this is then all the tracking elements come along with it. So you know who attended your presentations, you know who chatted, asked questions, you know what documents they downloaded, what content they engaged with. All of that is part of it. And so there's two means of delivery. Either your team does it via your CRM or your communication tools, or the Conduit team does it as part of our marketing services. And when we do it as a marketing services, we actually develop a pretty solid cadence. This is an example from a few of our partners in the Missouri state system. We do a pre-event communication with a save the date, a watch live reminder the day of a presentation. And then we also capitalize on what we call the on-demand period, where the content is continuously available on the institutional platform for a student to view afterwards. So you think about students today, they're busy. They might miss the time zone on your reminder, or they might miss the first email, check the second one, try to check it the day later. If you do a presentation on a WebEx or a Zoom or any of those other types of platforms, you go to a dead link, right? You get the sorry, this presentation's over type of experience. When a student clicks a Q token link, it brings them to your platform and directly to the content while it's still live, right? So there's an opportunity now to make sure that this content is immediately available on demand and immediately archived so that there's no gap in the student experience. And then you're able to capture that tracking as well. And we see as high as a 50%, if sometimes even higher, lift on live viewers versus on-demand viewers during this content. So it's a great opportunity, again, to distribute your video content in a institutionally branded environment, which we know is trusted, and then leveraging the student voice and your counselor voice to reach those audiences. The other area that we help with is with simulcasting on social media. So the Conduit platform is available on desktop and mobile, lives in the cloud. There's no downloading of an app for a student to view a presentation. They click the Q token, it goes right to the presentation. But we also know that there's some lurkers out there who might have followed your social media presence, or parents who are following your social media presence, and you want to maybe do some programs that reach that audience as well. So we can actually parse off the stream and broadcast to Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube live as well. And we're doing a little bit of that with this presentation for today. So don't go check our social media channels until the presentation's over, but afterwards you can see that we were live. So one example of this would be Stony Brook University, right? Stony Brook is, it was looking to boost engagement with their incoming first-year students. They know who those students are. They're students who have been admitted and are enrolling at the institution. But they also know that not all those students are going to engage with their content, and parents aren't going to always engage with every email that they send. So they took their next steps for incoming first-year students, broadcast it to Facebook Live, and they reached 2,500 additional views of a combination of students and parents, on top of the 1,300 that came to the platform directly. And of the students who came to the platform, 63% of those students enrolled, right, which is well above the institutional average. So it gives those students an opportunity to access that content. The other element, I talked about it before, is chat, right? And chat is one of those pieces that is highly valued, very much underutilized. One example of chat would be our friends at University of Notre Dame. So Notre Dame, of course, is not a school that necessarily needs more inquiries or more applications, but they want to better support students throughout the process because they want to make sure that they're answering questions and being available. So you'll see on University of Notre Dame's admissions section of their website, they've embedded the Campus Connect chat tool, which you're able to use within the Conduit platform or on your site. And what's nice is there's two modes, offline and online. So if they don't have somebody manning their chat, they have the ability to say, hey, come back at these specifically scheduled times, and there'll be a counselor available, kind of like a counselor on duty answering the phone when parents and students call. And if a student has a question and they don't want to come back, right in the moment they want to ask that question, what it does is creates an RFI form, a request for information form, that's on every single page within your institution's website or the admissions section of the website, wherever you decide to place it. It's a strip of code that gets put on the site. The other opportunity is the online mode, which is a really great opportunity to boost engagement, because once a student comes to your site, it pops out immediately and says, hey, we're live. If you have questions, come chat with us now. They see who's available and they can start asking their questions. So it's a great opportunity, again, to make your website more interactive, be available in what could sometimes feel like a more anonymous environment. So it helps to identify who those students are. And what's nice is the chat widget is also mobile optimized. So if it's a student who their cell phone is their primary source of connection to the internet, now you're creating a text chat type experience for students without, again, having to make them download an app or share their personal cell phone number with you, right? So there's opportunities there as well. The last piece that I'll talk about on the Conduit side before I kind of simplify it a little bit and then kick it to Matt is the strategic planning element of all of this. So, we have example here of Syracuse University. I mentioned before, and I'll mention it again, 90% or so of building an online engagement plan has literally nothing to do with the actual webinar platform itself, right? The platform is you're going to log in, you're going to click broadcast, and you're going to share. Then the challenges are if it's recording, how you record it, and all those other elements. But that's all the stuff that happens before and after your presentations, right? So when we think about the planning that goes into the promotion, and we think about the post-event, making sure the content is immediately accessible, those are the areas that are important to think about, right? So Syracuse is one good example where they develop an annual calendar that includes targeted sessions on things like international students, transfer students, financial aid, domestic student application workshop. But then they also allow for programs from their individual colleges. So a lot of recruitment at Syracuse is done at the college level. So this gives them the opportunity to be able to unlock that content at the college level. This past spring, what they also did was hosted a spring admitted student open house, focusing on their admitted students from all over the world and inviting them to a variety of different programs, including all of their colleges, and answering questions about the honors program. 16 different presentations over a 2-day period, available on demand immediately after the broadcast. Again, time zones are a thing. When you think about the scatter chart of who attended their event, obviously heavy representation in the US, but also around the globe, they're not able to be live all the time, right? For every student around the globe. So having that on-demand element really helps. And so they reached 700 students live, plus an additional 150 students on demand. I challenge any institution in the world to have an open house that has the broad geographic reach that during an on-campus event that Syracuse had. So this global reach and engagement was able to be done without anybody having to leave campus, hop on a plane, fly to China, whatever, right? So there's an opportunity there. Now, of course, when we talk about the Syracuses, and we talk about Notre Dame having daily chats on their website, it can feel a little bit overwhelming, like, how do I get started when I think about that? So we'll take a step back. I'll talk about how we make it easy, and then I'll kick it to Matt to talk about how Strive clients can partner with Conduit to get the best results. So when we think about the opportunities to make it easy, the first opportunity is really that top of the funnel building of demand, right? So what we would recommend doing is identifying the prospects that you want to reach with an online event. So think about like an online open house or academic showcase type program. Those prospects would be things like your search lists that you acquired from a testing company or a survey company. It could be your inquiries from high school college fairs and visits and NACAT college fairs. Then what you would do is use the Conduit platform, either directly or through our marketing services, to generate those Q token login URLs, deliver them via email and SMS, driving them to that content at the top of the funnel. And because it's top of the funnel, you want to broadcast it beyond just the Conduit platform. So I would say you also broadcast it to social streaming as well, right? Because this is a great way to get those additional eyeballs, link it back to your platform so that students are able to engage with it, and you can maybe identify some additional prospects. Then the next opportunity is kind of deeper down, supporting yield. So doing things like application workshops for inquiries or students who have started but not submitted an application. FAFSA overviews for students who are at that phase of the process and need to be focused on affordability. And it's really nice to align these things with your overall strategic priorities. So if you can align it with your financial aid office and looking at students based on need level and those sorts of things, that's a whole separate webcast that we can do, but there's ways to do that as well. Current student panels are great for yield, sharing their experience, sharing their perspectives, and then scheduling topical chats throughout the year to kind of fill in the blanks. So making your team readily available and accessible. So you don't need to start with a 20+ event calendar like I showed for Syracuse. What I would recommend starting with is kind of 4 main cornerstone events to drive conversion and yield, right? So when we think about that top of the funnel work, academic showcases to drive discovery and demand. That's the first thing that students are looking for when they go to your website is academic information. So content focus there. Application workshops to drive completion. You don't want necessarily more applications, although that doesn't hurt all the time. What we do want is more completed applications. So what kind of content can we produce that helps support students through the process? I was at a conference a few weeks ago where one of the suggestions was chapterized content, step-by-step of how to submit the application. Super helpful. Make it mobile optimized so that they can have it open on one screen and be doing it on another. Great opportunity. Financial aid workshops, again, driving yield and supporting parents. And then finally, current student panels, which really support excitement and enthusiasm for enrollment, right? So having that opportunity to support at those key inflection points throughout the process is where you see the best results, right? So we know that when continuous and consistent omni-channel engagement is part of an overall plan, it boosts conversion and yield at each step of the way, right? Inquiry to app conversion on average, we see about 35% lift in inquiry to application submission, right? Now that number alone is okay, but it's not the best metric when the goal is to not just generate applications, it's to generate enrollments, right? So so what we also see is an average increase of about 26% in application completion, which is a great way, again, to find more students who are interested in the institution and who could possibly enroll, right? No student enrolls without completing the application process. And then finally, a lift in about 7% full life cycle inquiry to enrollment yield, right? And so what that says is that not only are we driving more applications, we're driving more completed applications from students who actually enroll. So that kind of just gives you an idea of, again, we talked about the student perspective, we talked about the online engagement trends in general. Hopefully what that does is kind of shows you how incorporating online engagement into an overall plan will help you with supporting conversion and yield at each step of the way. So I'm going to turn it back over to Matt to talk a little bit about how Strive partners can leverage Conduit in 3 different ways to support students throughout the process.
Thanks, Gail. That was fantastic. And hopefully you can all see why we jumped at the chance to partner with PlatformQ to bring our college partners new ways to connect with strivers in more, I guess, deep and meaningful ways online beyond the UStrive mentoring platform and our social media activity. We're reaching tens of thousands of students every year through the mentoring program, and hundreds of thousands of students through our partnership with the Common application. And as we'll get into here, partnering with Conduit, we've found additional ways to facilitate opportunities for our college partners to connect with strivers and vice versa. So we're looking forward to you guys engaging in some or all of these opportunities this fall and this year. So the first opportunity to connect are free live chats through the Strive branded platform that we've built on Conduit. Starting September 11th, bi-weekly on Wednesdays throughout the fall, we'll be utilizing the live chat widget in Conduit to go live online with a panel of our college partners to chat with students. We are inviting up to 10 schools per chat to join us. We'll send out a sign-up form starting next week, and space will be reserved on a first-come, first-served basis. Basically, we create the chat room environment. We promote these live chats to our student database of students who are registered users on UStrive, as well as leads that have been shared, who have opted in to us through the Common app. And we're coming together to answer student questions and share information about our respective campuses through these live chats. They were super well received last fall when we introduced these for the first time, and we're excited to go at it again starting in September. So be on the lookout for a sign-up sheet for us, from us, and jump on the opportunity to join one of these chats this fall and give Conduit a test drive, so to speak. Gail, you might be able to kind of describe it or show it better than I can, but when you guys joined the environment today with your Q token, you're in the Strive branded platform, and Gail, maybe you've opened up a chat that the users can see and maybe even ask some questions today if they have some.
Yep.
And I don't know if you want to kind of describe that in a little bit more depth or clarity.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of just to give you a feature overview, if you're logged into the Conduit platform, there's ask a question underneath a live presentation, so that if you have questions, feel free to drop those in there. And that's how a student would ask questions during a live presentation. The other way to engage is via the chat tool, which typically is used when you have pre-recorded content that would be used for what we call simu-live, which is when you record something live and then play it again at a later date. So think about like a financial aid workshop, right? You don't want to present a financial aid workshop 15 times throughout the year, but it'd be great to record it once, make it really good, and then have scheduled chats throughout that process to answer questions while students are watching the presentation. So from the student perspective, it's still a live experience. So what we've done to demonstrate the tool is we've actually opened up a chat widget on the webcast on Strive's platform. So if you have questions, feel free to ask them either way for this presentation. But that gives you the look and feel of what that widget looks like.
Awesome, thanks, Gil. The next opportunity to engage is to sponsor a private webcast for your institution. Through the Strive branded environment, we're able to co-host with a college a live webcast to feature your institution uniquely. And like we're doing today, broadcast a presentation by video and simulcast that presentation to your social media and our social media alike. We can market these events to our audience of prospective students, strivers, as well as to your database of prospective students. You might think about these Striver webcasts as being targeted to a prospective student audience this fall for recruitment. You might think about organizing a webcast for a parent audience later in the year. We would love to collaborate to do yield events for your admitted Striver populations, or over the summer, think about how you might take advantage of this opportunity for targeting students and even parents for some transition support and information. So there's a number of different topics, ways that you as a college can take advantage of doing a sponsored private webcast with us. We've negotiated with PlatformQ a highly discounted cost to doing those sponsored webcasts. So for only $800, you can opt into this opportunity. We would work with you to schedule a date and time that works best for you, work together to plan and prep the outreach and marketing and the content for the presentation, and those who took advantage of this opportunity last year had great results. So invite you to contact me to learn a little bit more and take advantage of that opportunity. Gil, anything you'd want to elaborate on as far as that piece of the puzzle is concerned?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add is, I mean, you mentioned it, the cost of doing one of these webcasts is probably about the same, if not less, than going to like a NACAC college fair, right? Where you're going to do those anyway, right? So think about this as an extension of that, where you can reach those large populations of students and actually identify all of them. And the other element that's interesting here is, while Strive will simulcast to their audience on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, you can also parse that off to your channels as well. So there isn't a barrier that keeps multiple Facebook pages or multiple Twitter accounts from being streamed to at the same time. So this would be a great way to kind of showcase to your broader campus community as well the type of work that you're doing to support underserved student populations, right? So it's a great way to kind of demonstrate that effort across those different channels. So I would encourage, if you sign up to do one of these with Matt, think about also streaming it across those different channels, because you're going to get a lot of opportunity across all those different audiences that pays dividends beyond just the individual program.
Thanks, Gil. That's a great analogy. For $800, think about what you're spending to travel to a college fair or a school visit, and through a one-time live webcast that is archived on our platform, but also social channels. The reach that you have and the bang for your buck is clearly delivers value. The third way to engage here is to really just jump in the deep end with PlatformQ and sign up to use the full scale of their technology. They are graciously offering our college partners, Strive college partners, special pricing and a free dedicated webcast targeted to Striver populations on top of their standard partnership offerings. So we're happy to connect the dots to Gil and his team. If that's something that you want to learn more about, set up a demo for you and your team to review a lot of what we've covered today, but maybe more from a kind of a sales pitch perspective, and see what it might look like to bring Conduit to your campus for your student engagement strategies. So that is the presentation we have for you today. Thanks for joining us again. Here's our contact information. We'll be following up with you as well. Maybe we have 2 or 3 minutes to answer some questions, Gil?
Yeah, so there's a couple of questions that are in the Q&A box, and I'll stay in the chat afterwards as well. So if there's any other questions that come up, feel free to use the chat tool. But one question that comes up pretty frequently is, how long does it take to build one of these platforms? Do you do the work? How does our IT team? Those sorts of things were a couple of the questions. And I will say that this platform that you're viewing the presentation in is developed and built by PlatformQ Education, right? So the Conduit platform is developed and hosted by PlatformQ. The content that is distributed is produced by your team, right? You're telling your story, you're sharing your content. We can provide insight and feedback on timing and cadence and the marketing programs and those sorts of things, but it's your presenters, right? As far as the setup process, it's about, we can go from signature and an agreement to first event in 2 weeks or less. That of course is always the fire drill scenario of things. What we like to do is build out a more holistic plan that is aligned with your deadlines, aligned with your on-campus events, your regional events, and those sorts of things. But a lot of schools that came on over the summer, to be candid, within the first 2 weeks of coming on, we're doing pre-orientation, pre-arrival type content for their enrolling students. And now we're starting to get into application workshops, academic showcases, which are the ones that take a little bit longer coordination time on both sides, right? So to be able to make sure you have good content together. But 2 weeks or less from signature to platform. And then it's about what your strategy looks like from there. Another question from Cindy said, she asked, do you have recommendations for promoting? We've done webinars in the past. Numbers have been kind of slow. Yeah, I mean, great point. And that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about how, it's easy to set up and host a webinar, right? Anybody can go to webinar.com, create an account and start a webinar. 90% of the work is what happens before and after that, right? So what our team does is develops a promotional cadence for each program. And if we're working with our marketing services, produces the email content, the text message content that goes out, and then post event, really capitalizing on that on-demand period. I can't understate how important the fact of that content being immediately available is super helpful for students, because they're not going to necessarily come right when you are live. They're going to come maybe when you're live. They might come when you're live and then leave and then come back. So making sure that content is immediately endured, immediately available is critical, right? So that would be my recommendation, is having that software piece set up in that way, which Conduit allows for. But then also the promotion planning is an important piece.
And that's why the Q token is so brilliant too, that you can upload your database into PlatformQ in advance, and assign each student, each email address a unique Q token link that they simply click on at the time of your broadcast, or even afterwards to catch the recording. That brings them directly to the page without a registration wall. And for students especially, breaking down that barrier to entry really increases conversion and participation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, we were talking this morning as you were getting ready to get the Q tokens out, and it's a mail merge into your email system, right? To be able to send those tokens to your audiences. And that one little piece of work will boost show rate, because it removes that barrier of having to register, download something, et cetera.
Yeah. And just to drive that point home, on the back end, you're able to get reporting on who's used that Q token link to access the content. And so, you know who's joining live or watching later, and following up with those leads accordingly.
Yep. Awesome. Well, we have a couple of questions that are coming in the chat, but I think I'll be able to handle those, because I know Matt's an important guy. He's got other things he's got to get to today. So we're going to end the live broadcast here. It'll be available on the platform. And if you have any other questions, please just keep asking them in that Campus Connect widget. I'll either answer them or text Matt and get the answer, and we'll figure that out. So Matt, thanks so much again for the opportunity for us to be able to present to your audience. We really appreciate it. Appreciate this partnership, and we look forward to more. So thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Right back at you, and everybody have a great start of the school year.